get fired, might as well be me, because I'll get another job, I'm sure of it. Like, I can shovel rocks real good, so at the end of the day I know I'm going to have another job someday. So I take the risk for my staff because I want them to feel supported and be willing to take the risk for our families to support them better. So whether that's kinship, hey Anna, I really think this kinship home is good, well, let's see it. How is it good? Show me, explain to me. If we both agree that that's a good amount of risk, good, sign it off. I'll sign it off. I want them to feel supported. I don't want them to take a risk because they're worried they're not going to be able to feed their family. I'll go kill a moose. I'll be good, so my family will still eat if I lose my job for a little bit. But that's what we do. And I wish I knew more about other people's, but I don't. I don't want to comment on that. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to just briefly exercise my chair's prerogative and make a question and a comment of my own, because I know you are speaking to my own experience. Before I got elected, I was working in high level as a mental health worker, and I went to Paddle Prairie every week. Myself and another mental health worker, she focused on children, and I did families and adults. And so I understand what's going on in that community. We also had a worker I supervised who did direct family support. She had a much harder time connecting with the community. They would respect us as professionals and come to see us. But so I'm hearing what you're saying, that sometimes when you're not from the community, it's hard to build those connections. But I'm kind of thinking there's a perception in the North, because we have difficulty attracting and retaining people. Always the perception is that we're getting the least qualified, the bottom of the kind of barrel. Everybody who comes up, that they just come to get their experience. What of that perception, if we went with a model that, like you're suggesting, that perhaps doesn't have to check every box on the application form from HR, then what about the perception that maybe you're getting somebody who's not as qualified, that perhaps we're giving to the community less than what they deserve simply because you are a Métis community? That would be wrong as well, right? But I think we're also very creative in the North about coming up with solutions. For example, in the hospital, they're bringing in high school students, training them to do dual credit as nurses' aides to get them kind of moving up that ladder. Could we use a model like that in communities like Paddle Prairie? So I'd be interested kind of in getting your perspectives on that.
I'm already doing it. I'll take the uninformed, because the uninformed are the best ones. I can train them the way I want them to do business. I have incredibly strong supervisors. The work I do, I get some credit just because I sit there, but it's the supervisors who do it, and it's they just take my sort of what I feel like, and then they turn it into practice. And then they are very strong supervisors. We have strong caseworkers because they're supervised strongly. And so I'll grow my own because that's the best way for me. My problem is when I post a position, I got to go 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I got to go through that rigmarole, and I'm interviewing people from Kentucky. And no disrespect to Kentucky, I just don't really feel they were willing to make the move to High Prairie. I think they might just be doing. So I run into those kind of problems, but I like the developmental positions. Like I have 2 Aboriginal interns in my office. I stole 2. I couldn't get them. I'm going to extend them because I'm growing my own, but I'm running out of options with them. I'm going to talk to Russ after. He's going to help me out with some stuff. So he doesn't know that yet. But I want to create their own. But I want to create my own workers, because we're having trouble recruiting a person to walk in and say, yeah, I'm a 6, I'm good to go. Well, I don't know. Like we haven't, obviously, because they call it difficult to recruit to. So we have more involvement with NLC now, who has a social work program up in the North. I can't sit there because I'm actually on the board of governors. So I said, somebody's got to sit there, and somebody better be talking us up a lot to these new social work diploma students, because we're picking them up if we can. We're finding ways, and and I said, we're not taking just anybody. I said, I want your best. Don't give me nothing else but your best. I said, because I want a top student. You're going to have to impress me in order to come into my office, because my office has incredible stats. My office is doing great. We're respectful to our community members, and if you're going to be a part of that team, you better be something special too. So we're doing that now, and we get all the cream of the crop, and that's just out networking and making sure we're getting the right people. It's the best way to do it. But if you got weak supervisors, you're going to have weak caseworkers, I think. And so you need strong supervision, and there's a accountability pyramid there, and it just starts from the top, and everybody has to be strong. And we've got to keep strengthening each other all through that process, and then we're going to have strong caseworkers. And yeah, so that's what we do in our office. I don't know what other people do.
Just 2 things really quick, conscious of time. First off, just as I'm aware that this is recorded, I'm wondering if I could have a transcript for a Z-Pass. Just if that could be noted somewhere. The other thing is, and it has to do maybe back to Heather's question and maybe Greg's supplemental, but it's around, the gray or who we recruit and how do we do that and how do we take risk. The one thing that I would want to say and point out is sometimes we, and I'll say we maybe loosely about even around this whole table, myself included, that type of decision making and planning and who we recruit and how flexible and gray we are feels really good for most folks until something bad happens. And then unfortunately, as a system, we start looking at, well, who made that decision? How did that happen? What qualifications did they have? What kind of training did they have? And we get really hard on ourselves. And we start reverting back to a corporate culture of, top education, top experience, nothing less, because that will prevent bad things. Careful about that. And guess what you end up with? You have a hard time getting an INER. So there needs to be a system that actually, I think, focuses a little bit more on that it's, more important to do the right thing than to do things right. And I think sometimes doing the right thing includes the need to have some tolerance and understanding that the right type of service provision might need to allow a little bit of flexibility as long as it comes with some temperance in knowing that not everything will always land the way you wanted it to land. Doesn't matter who you hire.
And since he's the new kid on the block, I'm letting Tyler have real quick last comment.
Just not really a comment, but again, just sort of an acknowledgement. I want to thank you for the presentation. And Einar, your story is so inspiring. And thank you for sharing that today. It's very meaningful and heartfelt. And it certainly hits home for many of us here today. I also like your approach, your meat and potatoes and your fluff on the side. That's certainly me. I'm not a politician. I'm not with government, but I certainly work in the community. I work with many of our kids and youth at risk. And I take a lot of risks in my job and in a position, and I stick my neck out a lot of times, and if it gets cut, it gets cut, So I certainly understand where you're coming from. Just a simple question here. One of the things that I hear a lot from my colleagues and other Indigenous groups in Alberta is the issue of jurisdiction. So is there any collaboration at all with the federal government? There's a lot of issues around access and gaps and services and resources. Is there any collaboration at all? So that's just my question.
So I'm not clear on the question, but you're saying, do I collaborate with the DFNAs, or I always have an opinion on everything. So when I talk to, and I meet the DFNAs all the time, I have friends that are, what do they call them, the director of the DFNA or whatever. I have friends like that. I'm actually golfing with one tomorrow, but going straight to work. So I always listen to them, and the thing I like about government is that there's a standard, and you have to meet that standard. And when you meet that standard, the chances are, if you're meeting that standard, you're going to be providing good casework. You're going to be doing pretty good. The provincial standard is every 3 months you must have a face-to-face. In my office, I have a standard of every month we're going to have a face-to-face because lots can happen in 30 days. And so that's our standard. Not just contact, not just a quick, hey, I saw him at IGA, that's good. No, we have meaningful contact. So when I was listening to the DFNA speak, they were talking about underfunding and stuff like that. So when I have children in care that need to be with the DFNA, and the DFNA says, well, I can't get reimbursed for that. And these are off-the-cuff conversations. I know this is what it's looking like. And I said, I'm never going to argue about serving an Albertan. I said, this is Alberta money. This is Alberta. You're an Albertan. I will serve this individual. I don't care whose jurisdiction, as long as it's in a respectful manner, we decide that that's where it's going to go. I'll deal with it. And so the DFNAs, I always look at them, and if you are underfunded, I like the standards the government has. If we could ever top up the DFNAs and say, hey, with Alberta money, these are Albertans here. They live in our province of, this is where we're getting all our resources from. We should be able to support them with a top up to make it equal. And once they're equal, we should also have the option to say, hey, but we'll also apply these standards. Like, let's all meet the minimum standard. That's the least common denominator. That's the easiest thing we can do for our communities is meet the standard. Like, they're set out for a reason, and I think they're a good standard. Like that, if we're doing the minimum standard, we're going to be doing decent casework, and I would just like to see that everywhere, because I see the results a lot of times, and I look, oh man, how do we not do that? And I'm blessed with a really strong staff, and smaller and community oriented. We have all those things going for us, but I often wonder, how come we couldn't do a face-to-face? What's the barrier there? And let's solve that. If that was my office, I would be figuring it out. I would want to know why we can't do it. And there are legitimate reasons for a lot of things, but we should always be continually working to improve on whatever's their weakest. So whenever I get my data results, I look at the lowest performing one, and I say, there's our focus. Like, now we got to focus again, guys. Here's something we can improve on. And so we're always in this continual sharpening of the saw. We're gonna keep fixing the little problems so they don't become big problems. And the Alberta standards, what the DFNAs go through, all those things, there's things where we could learn and just adjust and start fixing. And we should always be fixing something. But I do collaborate with them a lot. They're a good resource for me. They got my back sometimes.
So I want to say thank you so much to Russ and Einar, and we really appreciate I think we've all learned a great deal tonight, and I'd encourage you to please continue giving us that feedback. You've given us some great ideas, great suggestions, so keep it coming, keep communicating with the panel, because you're going to support our work, and we appreciate that. And I do want to apologize for going so far over time. We're going to have to find a way to maybe improve our timekeeping.
Sure, I know.
We're going to catch up on other things for our next meeting. I think we are all ready to go home. 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 Ready to go home.